This story is about an 11-year-old black girl named Nyla Carter, whose gift for fixing machines uncovers a dark secret hidden for years. When she helps a powerful billionaire stranded on a quiet country road, a forgotten ring on her finger reignites a trail of buried experiments, missing children, and inherited guilt. What begins as a kind gesture becomes a fight to expose a hidden system that preys on gifted kids, and Nyla might be its next target. The sun that afternoon felt angry. No breeze, no mercy. It baked the rural Massachusetts road like a forgotten skillet shimmering with heat waves. Nyla Carter wiped the sweat from her brow and adjusted the straps on her backpack. Her sneakers made soft, crunching sounds on the gravel shoulder. The silence was interrupted only by the whir of insects and the low, steady hum of something out of place. A gleaming red car sat parked ahead, hood popped open like a wounded mouth. A man in a crisp white shirt and tailored navy suit circled it like a vulture yelling into his phone. "I don't care if it's triple overtime, I've been stuck here for 2 hours. I've got a summit call with the governor in under 90 minutes. He lowered the phone, checked a gold watch, then let out a string of curse words. Nyla slowed her pace. Her Aunt Sharon always told her to keep walking if she saw something suspicious, especially white men in places they didn't belong. This wasn't the kind of road billionaires ever stopped on unless they were lost or hiding something. But there was something raw in his frustration. Not danger, just desperation. Nyla bit her lip. Her backpack shifted the familiar weight of her little red toolkit, bumping against her spine. Her Uncle Devin had put it together himself, said if she could fix radios blindfolded, she could learn cars next. She stepped cautiously closer. "Excuse me, sir," she called out. The man looked up, startled. When his eyes met hers, his expression changed. Not relief, not thanks. Just that tight, distant look adults gave when they were trying not to laugh at you. "I appreciate the concern, sweetheart, but this car costs more than your entire school budget. I'm waiting on a real mechanic." Nyla shrugged. "Suit yourself." "But I bet it's the cooling system," he scoffed. "Excuse me, steam's only coming from the front left, not the whole engine. Might be your radiator hose." She shifted her backpack off, kneeling beside the car without asking. Uncle Devin showed me what to look for. Before he could protest, she was already peering under the hood with the quiet precision of someone used to being underestimated. Her fingers traced along the piping eyes, narrowed. "When did it start overheating?" she asked. "About 45 minutes ago," he replied, still dumbfounded. "Smelled sweet, like maple syrup." His brow furrowed. "Yeah, now that you mention it." She pointed to a damp patch under the car. "Coolant leak." He blinked. "What's your name?" he asked, finally watching her more closely. "Nyla Carter," she replied, standing and wiping her hand on her shorts. "And you are," she added without a trace of fear. The man hesitated. Jason Granger." She nodded. "Well, Mr. Granger, I can patch this for now." From her backpack, she pulled out a roll of silicone tape, wrapped it expertly around the leak, then reached for his water bottle and poured it into the tank. "That'll hold until you reach town," she said. "Just don't drive more than 20 miles. But Jason wasn't listening. His eyes had drifted to her hand as she pushed a braid out of her face. A ring, a deep emerald set in a thin, antique gold band, caught the sun and sent green light dancing across the car hood. He froze. "Where did you get that?" he asked suddenly. Nyla looked down at her hand, then back at him. "It was my mom's. She passed last year. Said it was a promise from someone important." Jason's face had gone pale. The stone had a crescent-shaped fracture inside imperfection by nature, but unforgettable to him. He'd given that ring away a lifetime ago, to a little girl in a place that shouldn't exist anymore. He exhaled shakily. Do you remember where she got it?" "She just said it was part of my story," Nyla said. "That I'd understand someday." Jason offered to drive her home. She hesitated, then nodded. He kept the questions casual. School, her uncle, how long she'd lived in Gardner Hollow. "I've been here since I was 3, she said. "Before that?" I don't know. My mom didn't talk about it much. What was her name? He asked. Amara Carter. Nyla replied, looking out the window. Jason's hands trembled on the wheel. Amara Carter had worked as a systems tech in one of the most controversial programs his father had ever funded. She'd disappeared when the project was shut down, no trace, no records. He parked in front of a modest brick house with hand-painted shutters. Nyla unbuckled about to hop out. "Wait," Jason said, reaching into his briefcase. He handed her a silver business card with embossed black letters. "If you ever need anything at all, call me." Nyla stared at it. "Okay," she said, tucking it into her pocket. She waved as she ran up the steps, the ring flashing once more before vanishing into shadow. Jason sat frozen behind the wheel, unable to breathe. As she disappeared inside, he picked up his phone and made the call he'd been dreading for over a decade. "Yeah," he whispered. "It's me. I think I found her." What Nyla didn't know, what she couldn't know yet, was that someone else had been watching too. A dark SUV sat idling at the end of the block, its tinted windows cracked just enough for someone to see her face. The man inside lifted a radio. "She has the ring. I repeat, target confirmed. Static. Orders." The reply came cold. "Observe. Do not engage. Not yet." That night Jason couldn't sleep. He sat in his penthouse office overlooking the Boston skyline, the city lights flickering like static in his mind. The silver card printer on his desk still held the blank from Nyla's card, the imprint barely dry. He played the moment again in his head, how the emerald ring had glinted on her finger, how her voice echoed with the same cadence Amara used to have. It was impossible. Yet here she was. And if she was still alive, what else had survived? He opened his laptop and typed in a name he hadn't spoken aloud in over a decade. Harmony Creek Developmental Center. Nothing. He tried another Project Helix. Carter. Still nothing. All traces had been scrubbed clean. But Jason knew where to go next. By morning, he was standing outside a one-bedroom walk-up in East Cambridge. A man in his late 30s answered the door wearing a threadbare t-shirt and eyes like he hadn't slept in years. "Miguel Ruiz?" Jason asked. The man blinked. "Who's asking?" Jason Granger. "I need your help. It's about Harmony Creek." Miguel froze. "Get in." Inside stacks of documents lined every surface: newspaper clippings, redacted government files, photos of children's faces half torn by age, and thumbtacks. Miguel had once been one of the best investigative reporters in Boston. But after a series of stories mysteriously killed in editorial and a sudden fire that destroyed all his backups, he'd gone freelance and paranoid. "You were part of it," Miguel said, eyes narrowing. "Your family funded the whole thing." Jason didn't deny it. "I thought it was just experimental education," he said quietly. "My father kept me in the dark. But now, I found someone." Miguel studied him. "Let me guess. A girl, about 11. Black. Brilliant." Jason nodded. Miguel turned and pulled a thin file from his shelf. "We had reports of over 47 kids at Harmony, most adopted, all with above-average IQ, some with more. But after the fire, all traces vanished. No adoption records, no parents. Just rumors." He slid the file across the table. Inside was a grainy black and white photo. Jason recognized the girl in the corner instantly. Nyla, maybe 3 years old, holding hands with a woman in scrubs. "Amara," Jason whispered. "She faked identities to escape," Miguel said. "I traced her movements across 6 states. She was always one step ahead of someone. Someone dangerous." Jason felt sick. "I need proof," he said. "I need to know what my father did." Miguel hesitated. "I might have something. But I've been warned off this before. My apartment was bugged last year. I don't know who's still watching me. I'll fund whatever you need." Jason replied, "Just get me the truth." As Miguel dug into a locked drawer, he handed Jason a scratched thumb drive. "This is all I have. It's a surveillance video from the night Harmony burned down. Never aired. But there's a frame, just one, where a child runs from the back door holding something." I always thought it was a toy. But now, Jason plugged the drive into his laptop. The video crackled to life, chaos smoke, firefighters yelling. And there, paused in blurry motion, was little Nyla, clutching a metallic object shaped like a flower. Not a toy, a casing, a key. Back in Gardner Hollow, Nyla sat on the floor of her tiny room, the silver card glinting under her lamp. She turned it over and over, then reached into her dresser drawer and pulled out a notebook labeled "Mom's Stuff, Do Not Touch." She hesitated, then flipped it open. Inside were pages of scribbled circuits, machine diagrams, and one line repeated several times. "If anything happens to me, she must never end up back there." Her fingers moved to the bottom of the drawer. She tugged gently, felt something click. A false panel slid away to reveal a rusted tin box. Inside, old Polaroids, a half-melted flash drive, and a folded newspaper article. "Fire destroys Child Development Center. 12 feared dead." The photo attached showed a smoldering building and a woman's silhouette running from the frame. Nyla stared. Her mother had always said they moved because of job stuff. Now it felt like their whole life had been running. That night, Jason got a call. "I followed the money," Miguel said through the static. "Harmony Creek was purchased by a shell company 2 weeks before the fire." "You'll never guess who set it up." "Who?" Jason asked. "Your dad, Martin Granger, under a different name." And it gets worse. The shell company now owns an underground research facility in Nevada. Jason's pulse quickened. What are they doing? Recruiting, testing, children, with cognitive enhancements? Jason's voice was cold. "Send me everything." But as he ended the call, a second number flashed across his screen. Unknown. Blocked. He hesitated, then answered. "You're looking in the wrong places." Jason came, a deep voice. "Who is this? You should have let her stay hidden." Jason's stomach dropped. "Don't make us remind you what your family built." The call ended. Across town, another SUV parked outside Nyla's school. A man in a dark suit watched through binoculars as she walked out, swinging her backpack, smiling with her friends. He lifted his wrist mic. Confirming visual. Subject still local. "Should we move?" The reply was instant. "No. Let the past come to her." And the car pulled away, slow, deliberate, and unseen. Jason didn't sleep that night either. He sat alone in the same penthouse office, but something had changed. The skyline beyond the glass now looked like a fortress. Every tower a monument to his family's reach, but also a wall. Every light in the distance reminded him of how deep the shadows could go. He stared at the paused frame on his laptop. Nyla, barely a toddler, running from the fire with a strange metal object in hand. A flower-shaped casing. Just like the sketches Amara had drawn years ago in the margins of her notebooks. The line on the screen looped in his head. "Don't make us remind you what your family built." Jason closed the laptop and stood up. There was only one person who might still have the full archive. His father. Martin Granger hadn't answered any of Jason's calls since the incident on the road. But Jason knew where to find him in the family estate in Oak Hill, a compound hidden behind 7-foot walls and silence. He arrived just after dawn. The staff looked surprised, but didn't stop him. They never did. Martin was already awake, seated in the sunroom, sipping black coffee and flipping through a newspaper as if the world hadn't changed. Jason stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I know what you did," he said. Martin didn't look up. "Be more specific, son." "I've done a great many things." Jason took a breath. Harmony Creek, the shell companies, Project Helix. Martin finally lowered the paper. "Ah." Jason slammed a folder onto the table, the one Miguel had given him. "This is what you called developmental enrichment. You were trafficking children with high IQs. Amara was one of your staff. You lied to everyone, including me." Martin's expression barely changed. "You make it sound so sinister. We invested in potential. The government funded the science. We simply streamlined the selection process. You mean branding kids as assets, Jason snapped. They were going to waste in the system, Martin replied coolly. We gave them purpose. Jason's voice cracked. You gave them fear. You buried them. Martin leaned forward, voice cold and sharp. And yet here you are. Wearing the suit, bearing the name, living off the very foundation you now claim to condemn. You think walking away from it absolves you. That little girl you found, she's not your redemption arc. Jason's hands clenched at his sides. I'm not here for redemption, he said. I'm here for the files. All of them. Where are they? Martin stood. For a moment, the air turned heavy. I burned them, he said flatly. Jason stared at him. I knew someday someone would come digging. So I cleaned house. The originals are gone. Only references remain buried in server backups, data fragments, places you'll never find. But Jason caught something. Martin's fingers had twitched ever so slightly toward the tall bookcase behind him. Jason glanced at it, then back to his father. Then, you won't mind if I look around, he said. Martin didn't stop him. In the minutes that followed, Jason scanned the room for hidden latches. When he reached the shelf labeled Legacy Contracts, something clicked. Literally. A soft shift of wood. Behind the shelf was a locked cabinet. Jason pulled out his phone and ran a thermal scan app. It pinged immediately, an encrypted hard drive inside. He didn't ask permission. He just took it. As he turned to leave, Martin spoke again. Jason. He stopped. If you open that, you better be ready to deal with everything that comes next. Because truth isn't just light. It burns. Jason said nothing and walked out. Back in Gardner Hollow, Nyla sat cross-legged on the floor of her workshop behind the house, the tin box in her lap. Her hands were stained with oil, but her mind was somewhere else, back in the moment she found the newspaper clipping about the fire. Her mother had run through those flames for her, hid her, changed both their names. She now understood why they never stayed anywhere long, why Amara always slept with shoes on, why she taught Nyla to repair instead of read bedtime stories. But it was the little black flash drive that mattered most. She'd tried plugging it into her aunt's laptop. Nothing. Then she remembered the ring. She turned it gently. There was a faint click. A tiny gold pin extended from its base. A connector. She plugged it into the flash drive's side port, and suddenly, the laptop screen flickered to life. A simple interface appeared. Black screen. One prompt. Password required. Nyla stared at the cursor, blinking like a heartbeat. She typed the only phrase she could remember Amara saying over and over again. She must never go back. Access granted. The files unlocked slowly. Diagrams, video logs, voice recordings labeled Helix Session 14, and a list of names. Children, dozens of them. Then she saw it. Subject H13, name Nyla Carter. Cognitive focus, mechanical perception project. Status, lost recovery, priority. Nyla's breath caught. They had been looking for her. For years. At that moment, her Uncle Devin stepped into the room, holding a folded piece of mail. This just arrived, he said, his voice stiff. From Boston. Addressed to you. She took it, hands trembling. The envelope had no return address. Inside, a single sheet. Printed in bold, your mother didn't die in an accident. Meet me at 9 p.m., behind the iron mill. There was no signature. She looked up at Devin. I have to go. He stared at her for a long second, then nodded. I'm coming with you. Somewhere in a corporate server farm outside Las Vegas, a security alarm blinked red. Someone had accessed a Helix file from an unknown device. A woman in a lab coat stared at the feed, then picked up a satellite phone. It's her, she whispered. H13 has reactivated the drive. From the other end, silence. Then the reply. Move forward with Phase 2 and send Orin. The old iron mill stood like a rusted ghost on the edge of Gardner Hollow. Nyla had never been there at night before. By day, it was just another decaying landmark, a skeleton from the town's industrial past. But now, under the hush of a moonless sky, it looked like a trap waiting to close. She gripped her flashlight tighter as she and Uncle Devin crept across the gravel. Each step echoed like a warning. Inside, broken equipment lay in shadows, and shattered windows cast crooked slivers of light across the concrete floor. "You sure this is safe?" Devin asked under his breath. "No," Nyla answered honestly. They reached the far wall where an old delivery dock overlooked the woods. A single figure stepped out of the darkness, hands raised. "I came alone," the woman said. "No wires, no weapons." She was in her late 30s, tall with curly hair tied in a messy bun, and a scar across her left eyebrow. But her voice was steady measured. "My name is Celeste Parker," she said. "I used to be H05. Nyla's heart kicked in her chest. "You were in Harmony." Celeste nodded. "Until the night it burned. I was 15. I escaped through the north wing with 2 others. They didn't make it." She reached into her coat and pulled out a faded ID badge, Harmony Creek staff intern. A fake identity, like all of them used. But the photo was real. "I found out about your mother," Celeste said. "I was watching her. She was the bravest person I ever saw. She didn't just run. She took evidence with her. I've been trying to decrypt it for years." Nyla swallowed hard. "Why now? Why find me?" "Because your access triggered the system again. They know you're alive. You're not safe." "Who's they?" Devin asked sharply. Celeste didn't answer right away. She looked over her shoulder, scanned the shadows, then spoke. "The ones who funded Project Helix never stopped. They just rebranded, moved offshore, changed the name. They're not looking for kids like you anymore to help them. They're building something. Training programs, enhanced perception protocols, military-grade brain adaptation." Nyla's fingers curled. "You're saying—" "It's still happening." Celeste nodded. "And worse. Because now they know what works." She pulled a small drive from her pocket and handed it to Nyla. "This is a key node in the old system. With it, you can access the hidden directory tied to your mother's credentials. But once you do that—" "I paint a target on myself," Nyla finished. Celeste hesitated. "No. The target's already there. You just haven't seen the red dot yet." Devin stepped between them. "If this is that dangerous, why tell us? Why not just go to the authorities?" Celeste laughed bitterly. "You think the FBI doesn't know DHS? Half of them are complicit. Others, too, scared to act." She took a breath. "But there is one person still trying to blow it open. A reporter, Miguel Ruiz." Nyla and Devin exchanged a glance. "We know him," Devin said. Celeste looked relieved. "Good. Because he's in danger. I think they found him. I haven't heard from him in 48 hours." Back in Boston, Jason Granger stared at the decrypted hard drive recovered from his father's study. Names, dates, checkpoints, projects labeled in cold language: cognitive stratification, neural override, asset transfer. Then, he found a new file. One word in the file name: Prometheus. He clicked it. A blueprint unfolded 3 interconnected facilities. One of them was a compound in Nevada, built 5 years ago, officially registered as a special education and gifted youth retreat. Unofficially ground zero for testing phase 2 of Helix. Jason's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. He let it ring 5 times before answering. "Stop digging," the voice said. "This is your final warning." Jason didn't flinch. "Who is Oren Silence?" Then the call ended. He stared at the screen. If they were sending Oren, then Nyla wasn't just a name in the archive. She was the centerpiece. Across town, Miguel Ruiz woke up, gagged wrists, zip-tied in a warehouse lit by bare bulbs. He could hear the hum of a generator and the tap of boots. A voice spoke from the shadows. "You were told to walk away." Miguel struggled against the restraints. A man stepped into view. Calm, broad-shouldered, dressed in charcoal gray, no expression on his face. "I'm disappointed," the man said. "You had promise. But you kept asking questions. And now—" He knelt beside Miguel. "You're going to answer a few of mine." Just as he reached for a pair of pliers, a loud crash rang out. The warehouse doors burst open, and a flashbang erupted into light. Shouts, Footsteps, smoke. When it cleared, the man was gone. And standing over Miguel, breathing heavily, was Jason Granger, gun in hand with a terrified security intern behind him. "I tracked the last ping on your phone," Jason said. "I didn't expect to be in time." Miguel coughed. Oren was here. Jason's blood ran cold. "Then, we're not in time at all." Meanwhile, back at the iron mill, Nyla stared at the files Celeste had given her. She plugged the drive into her laptop. A prompt appeared. Location verification required. Remote site access coordinates flashed across the screen. Celeste looked over her shoulder. "They're holding a summit at that location. I think it's a cover for a new round of evaluations. Kids like you. Like me." Nyla's voice cracked. "They're still doing this." "Yes," Celeste said. "And we have one shot to expose it." Where Celeste leaned in. "Nevada. 4 days from now." Nyla looked at Devon. Then, back at the screen. "I'm going." Celeste didn't ask if she was sure. Devon exhaled. "Then, so am I." As they packed up the gear, none of them noticed the drone silently hovering near the rafters above them, its red light blinking once before going dark. Transmission complete. On a screen hundreds of miles away, a face watched the feed closely. The man didn't blink, didn't speak, just reached for his phone. "Proceed," he said. "Let the prodigy come to us." The journey to Nevada wasn't quiet. Nyla sat in the back seat of the rental SUV, as desert plains stretched endlessly on both sides of the highway. The sun cast long shadows across the windshield, while Devon drove in tense silence. Celeste rode shotgun eyes scanning every passing truck, every exit sign, as if danger could erupt from the road itself. But it wasn't the threat outside that stirred Nyla's mind. It was what they were heading into. The file from Celeste's drive had revealed the coordinates of the so-called summit. A private youth innovation retreat, supposedly sponsored by a philanthropic tech conglomerate. On paper, it looked like a place for gifted children to build robots, collaborate on scientific breakthroughs, and pitch ideas to venture capitalists. But Celeste knew better. The event is a front, she had explained. They're evaluating kids for something called Tier Ascension. It's phase 2 of Helix. This time, it's not just observation. It's conditioning. Nyla still hadn't told them everything she'd read in her mother's encrypted files. She wasn't ready. Not yet. Because buried deep within them was a note written in Amara's handwriting that chilled her more than anything else. If they ever find her again, they won't let her leave. By nightfall, they arrived at a compound tucked behind an artificial canyon, complete with biometric gates and solar towers. Everything looked cutting-edge and eco-friendly. But Nyla could feel the weight in the air, like the air was watching her back. A young woman in a white blazer greeted them. "Welcome to the Helix Ascension Retreat," she said cheerfully. "You must be our special guests." Celeste introduced herself as an educational consultant. Devon posed as Nyla's legal guardian. Their fake identities held up for now. Nyla was registered as a late applicant for the weekend program. Inside sleek hallways with glass walls wrapped around high-tech classrooms, dozens of kids between the ages of 9 and 15 wore color-coded badges and worked on tablets or floated design concepts on AR projectors. It felt like Silicon Valley had built a summer camp. But beneath the polished surfaces, Nyla noticed the details. Cameras mounted in corners that weren't on the blueprints Celeste had shown her. Children being pulled aside for private testing by staff with unmarked credentials. And worst of all, one room she wasn't allowed to enter, marked only with a black keycard scanner and a sign that read, "Authorized clearance required." That night, after lights out, Nyla slipped from her dorm. She tiptoed past the hallway motion sensors and found Celeste already waiting near the eastern maintenance stairwell. "They call it the Vault, Celeste," whispered. "Where the real evaluations happen." They moved quickly, sliding into the service duct that ran parallel to the lower research wing. Inside the vent, Nyla's breath echoed off the walls. Her palms were slick with sweat. Then voices. "Subject B07 shows promise, but lacks emotional suppression. We'll recondition." What about H13? A pause. Too volatile. But her presence could trigger dormant protocols in the others. Celeste's face turned pale. They're talking about you, she mouthed. Nyla's fingers clutched the ring on her hand, the one Amara had modified. She twisted the stone until a faint click sounded, and the embedded drive inside powered on. The screen of her tablet lit up with real-time data flowing from the internal network of the compound. She tapped quickly, navigating past firewalls. Her mother's access code worked. A list appeared. Active evaluation subjects. B07, Spatial Memory, Chart Combat Calculus. D09, Predictive Strategy, Neural Net. H13, Mechanical Perception, Red Flagged. E12, Vocal Disruption and Audio Patterning. Nyla blinked. The list wasn't just names, it was files, videos, test logs, medical data, neural response scores. They were cataloging children like weapons. Suddenly footsteps. Celeste grabbed Nyla's arm and yanked her deeper into the vent. A pair of security agents walked past beneath them, one of them holding a tablet showing thermal readings. They're sweeping for movement, Celeste whispered. We have to get out. Back in their temporary quarters, Devon waited pacing. When they returned, Nyla's face was flushed with fear, but her grip on the tablet was firm. I saw it, she said. Everything. They're building a system of control, and I'm part of it. Devon sat her down gently. You're more than what they're trying to turn you into. You hear me? You are not their experiment. Nyla's eyes burned. Then, help me end this. Celeste leaned in. We leak the files, all of it, in one broadcast, but we need someone on the outside to push it through. A beat of silence. Then, Nyla pulled out the silver card Jason Granger had given her days ago. I think I know someone. In Boston, Jason's phone buzzed at 3:13 a.m., unknown number. He almost ignored it until he saw the attached image. A grainy screenshot of a child's evaluation report. The name, H13. Her photo, her file, her score, her future. Jason didn't hesitate. He called Miguel, still recovering from the warehouse ordeal. We're going to Nevada, he said. There's a summit happening. We're going to crash it. Miguel coughed. You better hurry, because I think someone else is already on the inside. Jason froze. Miguel pulled up a still from a drone feed he'd recovered from an anonymous source. A face. Blurred, but unmistakable. Oren. Back at the compound, Nyla awoke suddenly. Someone was standing at the foot of her bed. Tall, silent, wearing gray. She sat up fast. Who? But the figure vanished as quickly as he had appeared, leaving only a small card on the nightstand. She picked it up. On it, in embossed black lettering, was a single sentence. Some machines aren't meant to be fixed. The next morning she found out 4 children had been removed from the program overnight. No one talked about them. No one even said their names. Nyla didn't sleep after that. She sat in the dormitory common room, knees pulled to her chest, the gray card clutched in one hand and her ring in the other. The sentence echoed in her mind like a riddle, and a warning all at once. Some machines aren't meant to be fixed. At first she thought it was a threat, but the more she stared at the perfectly embossed letters, the more it felt off. Too clean, too deliberate, like someone wanted her to question everything, even herself. By sunrise, the 4 missing children still hadn't returned. Their beds were made personal items, removed names erased from the internal schedule, as if they'd never existed. She slipped the card into her backpack and walked out of the dorm. In the cafeteria, Celeste was already waiting at their usual corner table, scanning the retreat's daily itinerary. No one's talking, she muttered. Staff are tight-lipped. Kids are either oblivious or pretending to be. Devon joined them moments later, looking uneasy. I tried asking one of the assistants about the missing kids, he said. She told me they were transferred to a higher tier. Then she smiled like she was reading a script. Celeste's jaw tightened. Tier Ascension was the code name for Helix's final stage before public integration. Full behavioral redirection. Wipe out memories. Reinforce new identity. If they've reactivated that, we have to move now, Nyla interrupted. Today. Celeste didn't argue. We can use the system override you accessed last night. Plug into the mainframe, extract the live feeds, and stream them through a dark broadcast channel. Miguel set up a backup satellite link from outside Vegas, in case things go south. Nyla hesitated. We'll need a distraction. Devin looked at them both. I'll handle that. They stared at him. You two focus on the data. I'll find a way to get everyone's attention. At noon, the summit gathered in the main auditorium, a glossy minimalist hall with a stage wraparound screens and rows of chairs filled with donors, educators, and children in matching gray polos. A woman in a silk blazer took the stage, her smile wide, her tone rehearsed. Welcome, esteemed partners, to the next phase of human evolution. Behind the curtain, Nyla and Celeste moved fast. With a stolen staff badge, they gained access to the back control room. A wall of screens displayed real-time surveillance labs, dormitories, medical bays. Celeste connected Nyla's modified drive to the master console. Password prompt, bypass. Access granted. Lines of code flashed. Files opened. Live footage streamed. One screen froze Nyla in place. It showed a cold, white room. In the center sat a boy, no older than 8, strapped to a chair, wires attached to his temples. His eyes were vacant. The screen labeled him E12. He blinked once, every few seconds, responding only to tones. Next screen, subject B07 performing complex spatial tests under pressure. No acknowledgement of stress. Another screen archived footage. Children crying, begging, staff holding them down, injecting something. The footage had timestamps that aligned with the missing children's records. Nyla's hands shook. I have to get them out, she whispered. First, Celeste said, her voice shaking too. We show the world. She sent the signal. Out in the auditorium, Devin had just taken the stage. He pretended to be a confused guest speaker, then accidentally tripped over a cable, knocking out the projector feed. The audience laughed politely, until every screen in the room suddenly came to life. Footage began playing. The white room, the restraints, the injections. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some stood up. A few parents rushed toward the exits. Then a voice filled the speakers, Celeste distorted but firm. This is not a gifted youth program. This is Project Helix, an illegal operation harvesting children for neurological weaponization. Funded, protected, hidden, until now. The lights flickered. Security scrambled toward the control booth. Time's up, Celeste said. We have to go. But before Nyla could pull the drive, the doors burst open. A man stepped through in charcoal gray. Calm, cold, familiar, Oren. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. His presence silenced everything. You were always the anomaly, he said, staring directly at Nyla. Too much empathy. Too little obedience. He stepped closer. Your mother ran from me once. You won't. Celeste stood in front of Nyla. Back off. You're not part of this, Oren said. Yes, I am, Celeste replied, and pulled a small EMP grenade from her bag. You think I'd let you walk in here without a failsafe? He lunged. She dropped it. The blast wasn't loud, but it was total. Screens went dark. Lights died. Everything powered down. Run! Celeste screamed. Nyla grabbed the drive. Celeste held Oren back with a steel pipe as long as she could before he slammed her into a wall. Nyla didn't look back. She burst through the fire escape down 3 flights of metal stairs into blinding desert sun. Devin met her halfway with the car already running. Where's Celeste? She's buying us time. They sped off wheels, spinning gravel into dust. Behind them, the compound erupted into chaos. Sirens wailed. Helicopters hovered. Agents arrived. But it was too late. The footage had gone out. In a makeshift van 30 miles outside the city, Miguel sat with Jason and a small team of freelance journalists watching the stream hit 12 dark web channels simultaneously and 1 social media platform before it was yanked. Then Jason's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He picked up. It's me, Nyla said, breathless. We got it. But they have Celeste. Jason paused. "I'm sending a team." Before she could respond, the line crackled. A new voice came through. "You're clever, H-13, but not the only one." Then the line went dead. Back in the compound, Oren stood alone in the control room, watching the damaged console. He smiled. "They wanted a symbol," he whispered. "Now they have one." And then he walked away. That night, Nyla stared out the van window as desert stars blinked overhead. "What now?" she whispered. Devin didn't answer, because even he didn't know. The broadcast had gone viral for 6 minutes, long enough to shake the system, but not destroy it. And somewhere in a deeper vault, the next phase of the program had already begun. The van rattled down a dark 2-lane road outside Vegas, its headlights cutting across endless desert. Nyla sat pressed against the window, the cold glass barely calming the fire in her chest. The stars above looked indifferent, silent witnesses to what had just happened. 6 minutes. That's how long the truth lived online before it was torn down. But 6 minutes was enough. She had watched the views climb 200, 700, to 100. Then, a sudden flatline. Every link scrubbed, accounts suspended, comments disabled. Still, it had happened. And now, nothing would be the same. Devin drove in silence, his hands tight around the steering wheel. Miguel sat across from her, one eye bruised, tapping furiously at his laptop, saving mirror copies of every frame they'd captured before the servers could erase them all. "You okay?" he asked, glancing up. Nyla nodded slowly. "I think so." But she wasn't. Celeste was gone. Disappeared. And Oren's final words haunted her. They wanted a symbol. Now they have one. She knew what he meant. It was never just about stopping her. It was about using her, making her the face of something she couldn't control. An anomaly, a warning, or worse, a tool. She pulled the ring from her finger and stared at it. For years it had been her connection to her mother, a piece of love, of protection. But now she wasn't sure. Was it also a tracking device? A Tag A trigger. Jason's voice came from the front seat. "We're almost there." The safe house was a crumbling roadside motel with a broken ice machine and a flickering neon sign that said simply, "Rest." Ironic. Inside, they gathered around an old card table lit by a single overhead bulb. Jason laid out a stack of documents, hard copies printed from the Helix mainframe. Names, coordinates, procurement contracts, surveillance logs. "This is enough to trigger a congressional investigation," Miguel said. Jason shook his head. "Not without someone willing to say it out loud. On record. They'll bury it under national security like they always do." Devin looked at Nyla. "She's not testifying. She doesn't have to," Miguel added. "We leak it again. All of it. The footage. The audio. But this time, we go public with names." And then, what Nyla asked, her voice, quiet, but steady. "We keep running. Hiding." No one had an answer, because the moment they hit upload, they'd put targets on all their backs. Nyla stood, her gaze sharp. "They won't stop until someone makes them." Jason watched her carefully. "And you think that's you?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "But I know I'm tired of being chased." She turned to Devin. "I want to go back." He blinked. "Back where? To the compound?" "You're not serious." "She is," Jason said quietly. "She's thinking like her mother." Nyla looked at the ring again. "There's something we didn't access. A part of the system that's still locked." The way Oren spoke, it's like he knows there's more. Something deeper. Miguel frowned. "You want to break back into a facility crawling with federal contractors, private military, and God knows what kind of surveillance?" Nyla looked him dead in the eyes. "Yes." Silence. Then Jason nodded. "Okay. But you're not going alone." 2 days later. The compound was under internal review. The media called it a rogue tech facility involved in unauthorized child development research. The Department of Energy claimed jurisdiction. No arrests, no press conferences, just silence and a tall black fence around what remained. But the fence had a weakness, a drainage tunnel running under the perimeter designed to funnel stormwater out to the desert basin. Jason had discovered it during construction years ago, and now, under cover of night, they crawled through it one by one. Inside the facility felt abandoned. Empty chairs, silent monitors, unplugged machines. But Nyla felt it. A presence. A hum beneath her feet. They moved toward the vault, what remained of the testing chamber. Most files had been wiped, but Nyla's drive still held access. She placed the ring against a hidden panel. It unlocked. The vault door slid open. Inside was a single, glowing console, an interface unlike anything else in the facility. One word pulsed in the center of the screen. Prometheus. Jason stepped forward. That was the name of my father's original vision. "What is it?" Miguel asked. Nyla didn't answer. She just placed her hand on the scanner. The screen changed. Suddenly files exploded into view, not just research logs but simulations, models, generational timelines, experiments beyond Helix, beyond Harmony Creek. This wasn't just a test, Nyla whispered. It was a blueprint for what Devon asked. She turned, for the next generation. In one video, she saw a girl who looked like her, but not quite. Older, faster, sharper, designed. They hadn't just studied her. They had cloned her traits. Jesus, Miguel muttered. It's replication. Controlled evolution. Jason's face hardened. They were never just after talent. They wanted ownership. Suddenly the console screen flickered, and a voice came through, calm, male, mechanical. "Welcome back, H13. Phase 3 readiness, 98%. Nyla stepped back. "What is Phase 3? No answer. Just a slow countdown. 30, 29, 28. Jason yanked the drive out. The screen died. A deep alarm began to hum through the facility. "We need to go. Now." They ran. Back through the tunnel. Back into the open desert night. As the facility lit up behind them, floodlights scanning empty grounds, Nyla stood still and stared. Something in her had changed. She wasn't just running anymore. She was calculating, thinking, planning, because this wasn't the end. It was just the breach. 5 days later, news broke across the country. A coalition of anonymous whistleblowers had released over 3 terabytes of Helix documents to a decentralized network. A congresswoman from California called for an independent tribunal. A children's rights foundation launched a class action lawsuit. But no one could find Nyla Carter. Not on any registry, not on any footage, not even in the shadows. Because she had vanished by design. And in her place, graffiti began appearing across cities. A green ring, a machine drawn in chalk, and 5 words sprayed under every mural. Some machines fix themselves. Message to viewers. If this story shook you, if it made you question what's hidden behind power and perfection, remember this: justice isn't always delivered in courtrooms. Sometimes it begins with truth and ends with transformation. Subscribe for more stories of resistance, redemption, and the power of one voice that refuses to stay silent.